Hello, and thank you for attending our event today, New Technology Enhances Best Practice for the Center of Excellence. This is a live event, but it will be available on demand by Monday for the registrants that have planned to attend so far. So if for any reason a part of the screen cuts out or you have any problems, have no fear, it will be available. Covering this topic today, we have two guest speakers, JP Garbani from Forrester, who I'll introduce at greater depth, and Joseph Negley. The Center of Excellence, or the COE, has become very common in most global 10,000 corporations, and many consider it an essential component for organizational planning and support. The COE is aligned to support mission-critical enterprise apps such as ERP and CRM, which are core to the enterprise and may involve hundreds to tens of thousands of users. Yet most centers of excellence are held back from optimized results for simple reasons. Usually access to new technologies or awareness that they are there, and the benefits that these can provide for the performance and efficiency of the COE. The results may include increased user satisfaction, improved operational execution, and overall reduction of costs. So a lot to cover today. This live event has been, and the Forrester events for this month have been supported by hundreds of attendees, and JP Garbani has been our presenter for both. JP Garbani, for those of you that don't know him, is a vice president and principal analyst serving infrastructure and operations for Forrester. His expertise is in IT management software and IT ops, and his research examines shifting industry dynamics caused by the impact of new technologies such as virtualization on the organization. JP has several decades of real experience as an IT technology designer, marketeer, and client. Broad experience designing advanced technology solutions for both industrial and commercial apps and bringing them to market. He has written extensively on technology for many business publications and is a featured speaker not just at our events, but for many, many other vendors and organizations. So again, I want to thank our hundreds of registrants from around the world for signing up for this event. And I'm going to turn it over to JP to take it from here. JP?
Thank you, Michael, and welcome to everyone. We are going to talk today about how technology can support the Center of Excellence and get enterprise software, enterprise application, and processes better. So, during this presentation, we're going to talk about what is a Center of Excellence very briefly. Look at the core of the matter, which is always the application Center of Excellence, whether we are approaching it from a pure technology or a business process standpoint. We end up always looking at what is the application, how it serves the business process, etc. Then we'll touch the subject of how can we get the right metrics to actually support the Center of Excellence, and end up with a very short view of what the Center of Excellence dashboard could become in this new. So, what is a Center of Excellence? Well, IT organizations are usually very IT-centric, very technology-centric. Business organizations, by essence, are business-centric, and they understand their work, their activities, sometimes differently or better, or for good or worse. Sometimes in conflict with what IT is doing. We have numerous examples of applications that weren't exactly what the business wanted. So the Center of Excellence are really addressing this type of problem by bringing people from different horizons together in order to tackle and work on a given subject, and making sure that actually at the end of the day we get this subject right. So it could be how to address better a certain technology, like in this example databases or things like that, by bringing people from different groups, different visions into the Center of Excellence. It could be business process, how do I address this part of the business process? What should be the type of application? How are these applications adopted, etc.? Next slide. So, as I said, it could be, organized in different ways. We are all talking about innovation. We're all talking about, making sure that IT serves the business with innovative solutions and helps create better and different processes. We've seen that a lot with mobile applications and the absolutely overwhelming number of apps that are on the market. So that could be a way, the technologist, the IT person has a knowledge of technology and a knowledge of how that technology could serve or be implemented. The business may have a vision of the technology, of the end user using the technology, but may not have all the details. On the other hand, they absolutely know what they want to get. So bringing the two together in a working group, helps realize, put together the killer app that the business might need. It could be, by business process, where there are processes that were ad hoc, that have grown in time, that were based on the paper process that was created centuries ago. I remember talking to a bank once, and they had, this multiple folio type of paper that was circulating when copy was going there. This was about 30 years ago. And the funny thing that I found is that when you ask the question, why is there so many copies, and why are you sending a copy to these people, nobody could remember, because it's always been done that way. But, organization had evolved, the business had evolved, and the business process actually didn't evolve. So it could be, of course, by application area, the best way to use a CRM or an ERP or the type of thing. Next slide. So let's focus a little bit on what I think is the core center of excellence, which is the application center of excellence. And what the application center of excellence is trying to do is to understand how, the user is effectively adopting, using the application to support the business process. It's also looking at how best the user can be supported. What are the things that are, recurring problems with simply the application interface, not even talking about errors. When there is a problem, what is the procedure in place? Is there, an incident and problem management process? How does the escalation work, etc.? How can we, optimize this thing? How can we take this application and make it better to support the business? I remember one of the projects I worked on at the early 80s, and we were automating the work of a certain number of stores, bringing them, the new technology, the screens, the printers, all that kind of stuff. And the first complaint that our test users had was that it was a lot the process as it is in order to understand what needs to be improved, but we need a reliable, objective information. And, if we turn and look at the tools that we can use, they are in fact relatively unreliable. If we look at IT tools, monitoring, and we'll touch this subject a little bit later in the presentation, but monitoring of IT infrastructure and IT operations, that doesn't bring us a lot. Help desk information is mostly, about users calling, but it's after the fact. It's not very precise. It's sometimes not even archived, so it's difficult to go back there and mine the necessary information. We can use external consultants, people like myself, for example, but the tool that these consultants have is usually to create surveys or to talk to a sample of the business and IT population. And that is not an objective information. It's a very subjective information, because all of a sudden you can find employees who will take that opportunity to pour their heart out, about something that they don't like, or you will fall again into the political struggle between, different parties in the enterprise. So it's very difficult to actually find the right information. Next slide. And one reason that I, exposed earlier is the fact that what we can get from IT, which is very reliable and very objective, is actually very IT-centric. So if we look at, the typical way we are monitoring infrastructures and pieces of infrastructure and applications, we're basically, grouping that into three pieces. We have a big data center, or, whether it's an abstracted data center or like the cloud, doesn't really matter. We are bringing information into a server where we are creating some analysis and some dashboard of the information, and we are reporting that on different types of devices. And if we look at this, it's not going to bring us a lot. And next slide will explain why. We are actually, when we are doing this type of monitoring, we are reporting the wrong metrics. And it's sometimes very difficult to make the management of the company, even a very large company, understand that metrics is not, always valuable. Before joining Forrester, I did a lot of consulting for very large banking and insurance companies, worldwide type of companies, with hundreds of thousands of employees. And I remember that, I was asked to look at, capacity planning and that type of thing. And I was asking about what kind of metrics do you have? And I got an answer. Well, we got plenty of metrics. We got thousands of metrics. We're measuring everything. And when I started to look at the metrics, they were this type of metric that is, uptime at the component level. Well, I don't really care about that. I was fortunate if I could find, network bandwidth usage. I got internal server metrics. I got, all kind of metrics that were, number of packets rejected by routers on a network of 6,000 routers. That's very difficult to use and probably totally useless, and certainly useless in the center of excellence. Now, user problems that are reported to the help desk may be a little bit more interesting. change of flight and it's complicated with the credit because the flight was cancelled, blah, blah. And you'll notice that they have usually a nice user interface, but sometimes they go back to command line. And when they go back to command line to do something very special, all personnel at the counter will have a little black book, little piece of paper on which they have written, exactly what to do in which order in order to do the work. So users are like that. They are spooky. They are going to have their own stuff. And if they find a workaround, it will spread in the office and it will not be reported. It will affect productivity. It will be a problem eventually, but it's not reported to the help desk because, especially if, we're talking about an office that is removed from headquarters, or, a local branch or whatever. So, what can we do about that is the big question. So, we have of course, providing a dashboard, okay, as an answer, so that the center of, excellence could have some information. And of course, we are piling up in that dashboard the information, subjective and irrelevant that we had captured. So, we have functional support from the support engineer, tells us, something about what doesn't work or what code errors were made in the application, and we have the service desk data where we have a partial view of things that really end user couldn't overcome by themselves. And that's not enough. We have got to find a better solution than this. And we'll look at the next slide to find what it is. What we think is that the best solution is actually to understand what's going on at the end user level. What is the end user doing with that application? How, are they manipulating? How are they adopting it? Are they using it the right way? Are they making, errors, user errors, because the interface is not good or because they didn't understand the process? So, end user experience monitoring is probably the best way to accomplish or to provide data, solid metrics, objective metrics, to the center of excellence. The problem is that, there are different technologies and architectures to capture end user experience, or let's put it this way, different technologies and size that they capture end user experience. So we have, the oldest one, the first one on the market, synthetic transaction. And synthetic transaction is in fact an emulation of an end user. So it's either a script or it's the script behind a browser, etc. Anything that could, emulate the different steps that ideally an end user would take to use an application. Problem is that is the word ideally, because when you script it the way you think the end user is going to use it, and actually it doesn't do a lot. What it does, it tells you that the application is there. So in terms of availability, it's a great solution. In terms of service level management, it's a potentially good solution in the sense that you're getting performance information, and if you are, looking at big enough numbers, you're probably going statistically to look at all the cases, and you can do, very good statistics because this is a very consistent sample. It's always pinging the same URL, for example, so you have a very statistically solid example. But it doesn't tell you anything about what the end user is experiencing, really. You have network appliances, and for the same reason we're using synthetic transaction, network appliances are great because it could be capturing data on the network which once it's gone through the data center, you have no idea of what happened to that transaction at the end user level. How finally did they get to that point? Nobody knows. What you see with that type of technology is actually a bunch of data that are very good at alerting on problems and that are very good at telling you that something is wrong in your data center. Then we get the Java injection, which is a small agent, let's call it that way, that goes out with a page, measures a certain number of things, and sends that back to the host. That's also a very good solution, but it doesn't tell you anything also on what the end user is doing. It tells you how long it took for that thing to get there, so good response time, but nothing else. And finally, we have the desktop agent. That is the agent that is on your desktop, on your laptop, that's looking at what you are doing. It's looking at the different windows, the different stages through which your end user device is going, and it shows all errors that attempts that you made, errors that came back, errors that you did at the local level. It tells you everything about the end user. So, next slide. If we sum it up, monitoring the end user experience, well, and I said not really. We have three categories of technologies. Network appliance, okay, scripted robots, it's a synthetic transaction, and the JavaScript injection. All these are very good if what you want to do is actually manage your data center. For the end user, it doesn't tell you anything about it. So, next slide. If we put an agent on the end user device, then it actually provides you with what the end user is doing. So now you can start, looking at application adoption. Okay, because now you've got the information about what is it that the end user has been doing with this application, what are the sequence of or the steps that they are following, which may not be the scenario that was imagined by the business or by the application developer. What is the type of errors that they are making? Do they need more training? Is it difficult to use compared to something else that they had before? If you have changed the application, did that affect, that impact the end user and their work and their productivity? The other advantage is that contrary to most of the technologies we talked about, which are, HTTP, HTTPS based, browser based, here we don't care. We're looking at what's going on the desktop, so it could be a 3270 emulation. And we'll still understand, what type of manipulation and what type of adoption the end user is getting and what type of performance he or she is getting. So we can, therefore, using that, provide a direct link to, between the application, the IT people, and the business people. Next slide. So, we derive from that a couple of, best practices, okay? We understand exactly, we should put that in place. At every desktop, what's going on. We can audit what's going on. We can sort it by, application, by person, by, geography, by type of function, etc. We are now understanding all the problems that the end users are experiencing, whether these problems are, end user induced, or whether they are therefore we can report all the problems and we can sort them so that we can distinguish between things that are IT related, IT performance and IT problems, to what is, application usability, application productivity problems. And we can effectively measure adoption and understand, how people react to an application, whether their productivity increases, decreases, who would need help, etc., etc. Next slide. So now we have a different dashboard for the Center of Excellence. Okay, we have now information that could be used by the trainer, by the different sub-teams that are looking at adoption, by the functional support, to understand better, what problems the end user has. Okay, we can, show information to the developers to effectively improve the application. We can show the line of business that, not everything is IT's fault, and, well, maybe it's IT's fault, but it might not be, infrastructure related, it might be usability related, it might be also that the way we architected that application is not exactly right, etc., etc. So everybody is finding some information that is very useful for their participation in the center.
So as JP is describing, we're going to desktop because we want to enable the Center of Excellence to gather metrics that are unique and give a really complete view of the landscape of the business. So we're able to do that by, again, using this technology. It's out-of-the-box technology to capture all the application activity for 100% of the user base. And you're seeing an example of that here in a user issues dashboard. This unique solution is going to monitor, again, at the desktop level to deliver those new metrics, and metrics that aren't previously available through other APM tools or, giving you, information about what's going on the back end. By giving that full visibility to the users, it really enables a true measure of business efficiency. Performance for the Center of Excellence, to measure a baseline and track improvement. The data, and when we look at this data, you can see things like errors being collected. It's going to give you a representation of 100% of the errors that are affecting an application. So not just how many user errors are going to be reported, say to the help desk, but a complete picture of the issues affecting the monitored application. So when you have users opening help desk tickets, that's really just a subset, as JP was describing. It could only be as much as 10% of the total number of errors affecting the application and affecting the business. And again, this is all functionality available out of the box. Activity levels, true end-to-end response times as you look at the metrics here. And this is going to be for all users, all screens, all transactions. So just to look at the breakdown here, I'm going to select one user as an example. And you can see for this user we have multiple unique metrics being captured. The amount of active time a user spends with the monitored application. So you can see a breakdown of that on the right-hand side. This particular selected user accessed 2 applications for X amount of time, about 4.5 hours for one, and then 1.5 hours for a secondary UAT application. We also capture the average response time that the user is perceiving on their interface. So this is going to be the true end-to-end user response time. It's not necessarily the back-end database clock for how long it took to execute a query. It's how long it took for the user to click the button and for the result to be delivered to them. So it's a really unique metric to give you, again, the distinction between perception and reality, to validate something like a concern or a complaint that a system is slow. Now with this tool, we're enabling you to see exactly how slow it is and exactly where and exactly who's affected. We also, as you see, track the number of operations. So this is the activity level of individual users. And related to that, the number of system errors and the user errors they experience. So not just the activity level, but the quality of that activity. So we can break this down in a variety of ways. by application or module, which equates to a transaction code in some cases, individual screens. And we can also see a trend information in the graphs you see displayed here. So you can track activity over time, efficiency and performance over time, to see if information is flowing in to indicate that productivity or user performance is going up or down. And with each one of these metrics that we're capturing, there's drill down capability. So we can start at this kind of 1,000-foot view of the landscape, but each one of these individual metrics enables you to drill down into further detail to get to the bottom. You can triage and address issues faster. I'll just select a specific system error metric to give you an idea of how we drill down into this detail. We start with a summary report level, and we can even go to a more detailed level. So all these features translate to benefits. They'll basically clarify perception versus reality in the example which I gave before, where the user or a system user reports that the system or the application is slow. These exact metrics that we can deliver by capturing at every desktop level tell us exactly how slow the application may or may not be, where the activity levels are slowing down, who is affected, all the way down to an individual user or screen level. This is, again, JP mentioned how we're going to bridge the gap between business and technology. The IT department will now be enabled with new metrics. The Center of Excellence now has new insights, again, drive their objectives to help meet the business goals that they've set before them. The clear line of sight enabling issue prioritization based on business impact. If the COE has initiatives around a specific business process, they now have metrics they can see specific to that process. This also enables reduced risk during change management and additional benefits for training, user support, and other use cases. So looking at this detail here, you can see how we can drill down into the individual information that we're getting from the desktop agents as they collect data. And at the lowest level, we get a unique view. This is something unique, only available from NOAA, in that the actual user step-by-step workflow is presented in a very easy-to-interpret, very user-friendly, very actionable data format. It's a step-by-step of the user's workflow, which originally starts as a conceptualized business process. The business will design a workflow kind of as a concept, and then they'll execute that through the application that they're using. This takes that from the conceptual to the actual physical. It gives you real data to see information about what a user did step by step, screen by screen. And again, it's easy to interpret this information so that you can reap benefits from that. You can see individual user errors in this example here. And now you have not just the user error, but you have the individual context around that user error. So if a user is struggling, you now have information about where they're struggling and what led up to the particular issue they're suffering from. So you can take actions faster. You can identify the problem faster. The features of the workflow specifically, this is available for every single user that's being monitored in the system. Their full activity is going to be captured from the moment they log on to the moment they log off. We're also going to include any inactive or idle time. So we aggregate that into the reports and dashboards, which you saw previously, and you can actually see, if a user is truly active as they use an application, or if maybe they've stepped away or switched to email, maybe gone to get a cup of coffee. Again, this is enabling us to give the Center of Excellence clear ideas about application adoption, and not just, the amount of time users are spending in an application. If they have an open session, we also give you the quality of that time they're spending in that session. You can see here in this example, you have an SAP application being monitored, and this individual user has multiple sessions open at the same time. So regardless of whether or not the user is moving back and forth to different sessions or different applications, we can capture kind of the whole world view of that activity, or boil it down to the individual issues as needed. Again, benefits from this type of feature: clear clear picture of the actual user workflow, the executed workflow, versus the concept that was originally designed by the business. And you can compare this from one user to the other. Greater visibility for the Center of Excellence means faster time to triage and resolve issues. Someone in a support role can reduce the mean time to resolution for an existing help desk ticket through using real data that you see here. The reduced time to discover or investigate an issue is really eliminated by eliminating the need to recreate issues or screenshots. You don't need to have a lengthy investigation or interrogation with the users because you already have their workflow information available. This kind of has a ripple effect because your Center of Excellence and your IT support staff is going to be enabled with this tool to be more efficient in their tasks. That's going to actually enable them to resolve issues for the business users faster, which will kind of, again, have the ripple effect. It will result in the business users having more productivity and more user satisfaction, which definitely affects how the business is running. Another example of how we can capture information and kind of break it down is something we like to show here. This is called the Errors Profile Dashboard, specifically around user errors. So the user errors are really where the rubber meets the road. This is going to give you a real idea of how the true business is functioning. The users of your applications run into problems. They may not be reporting them. We can see all the problems that exist in the system by capturing 100% of the errors that affect the user base. And this is going to enable different value drivers like proactive support. We can now see problems that are happening, whether or not the users have reported them, and we can take action on those. We can also take information and address issues collectively as opposed to kind of one-on-one. So you can see here, in this view, we have a series of transactions. This is basically like a top 20 list to show me all my individual transactions in the monitored applications. How many errors in the blue are being experienced by a number of users in the green related to that specific transaction. So again, 100% of the errors for the monitored applications are captured. That's either system or error or non-critical messages that the users might be perceiving. The same agent-based technology is going to capture all this information regardless of the application that we're monitoring. So whether or not it's SAP or Salesforce or an Oracle ERP, we can present metrics in this same format for each individual one of those. We can also change the individual kind of way this data is sliced and diced to show you the individual error messages themselves, to show me how many users are experiencing or causing errors. Again, collectively addressing them or giving me the information to collectively address them. You can see an example here. I'm selecting a pure data entry error, filling in all required entry fields. It's happening over 300 times and it's affecting 46 users. We can see that broken down in different ways by using integrated user attributes. What you see here is an actual location breakdown of the individual errors in this particular category, so you can start to get an idea of where the user issues are being experienced and who's affected, whether or not it's a critical area or a location or a critical business team. You can change how the user attributes are presented to show specific information like functional role, for example. And these are very easy to apply, again, through simple integration piece with the solution. Once we have an idea of who's being affected, we can then take action and see, okay, on an individual level, how many users are affected in, say, a specific location. In this case, I'm looking at one individual location, and now we can see we have kind of a discrepancy with the user base. We have some users being affected more than others. This gives us, again, that pinpoint visibility to see where the problems are affecting my user base. This visibility is enabling the COE to take action, to help users who are struggling, to take problems that are affecting the business kind of out of circulation by resolving something collectively, say like an authorization issue that's affecting 10 people. they're able to resolve an issue faster. It could be as simple as updating a security role or sending a quick email to a group of users. That will, again, have the ripple effect where they can resolve the problem faster, drive up user satisfaction, drive up user productivity as a result. And this same dashboard type functionality, again, has information where you can drill down to detailed reports. It also has information like the trend. So to show how the performance and the user errors over time, are things getting better or are things getting worse? So using all of those features, the benefits, again, we've talked about a few of them. This is going to enable proactive user support. We can facilitate resolving issues that are unreported. We can reduce existing issues if those are in the form of help desk tickets. We can reduce those, both the existing tickets plus the flow of tickets coming in. We can create a more efficient COE or IT service desk servicing the business. Okay, and by, again, doing that, we create that ripple effect which we talked about. Enabling a sustainable training organization. By seeing people who are struggling, you can now identify the content where the users are struggling and the delivery area which needs to, where that content should go. So you don't need to necessarily circulate information through surveys or word of mouth. You don't have real data, again, to support a training or a COE or an IT service desk. For example, when you see a user struggling in an area that is like executing sales orders, productivity in that area has a direct bottom line impact. If you can identify if someone's experiencing 10 errors per day and reduce that by, say, 50%, that could directly result in more sales orders being processed and more profitability. So that's how we can actually use, the targeted training approach, which is enabled through the metrics we're capturing here. We also have the ability to look at individual business processes and model those using the solution. That you can see, okay, on a very specific level related to, say, a critical process, maybe like you can see sales orders being highlighted here, or something like a quarter-end process. Show me metrics specific to that. This is, again, going to connect the business with the COE through real metrics. We can identify the process itself, and we can model that through the solution by simple configuration of screens or transactions. That's a one-time configuration. And now once you have that configuration built, the performance metrics are available for that critical business process. So again, with this solution, we're enabling teams to see information without a lot of necessary data mining or kind of having to weed through a lot of noise. They have specific information related to critical areas that they need to monitor and they need to drive up productivity. Benefits of this, again, a clear picture of the user executed process, identifying adoption and process performance, identifying areas where a process might have some sort of a gap or inefficiency, and again, that's leading to process optimization and more best practices. These are just some of the unique features and benefits provided by the NOAA solution, and we'd be happy to share more during some other sessions or if you have individual questions. But that's about all the material we have for today. I will turn it.
Well, thank you, Jove, for that outstanding demonstration, and thank you, JP Garbani.